Hi everyone, Michael here from Mirrors of Consciousness and creator of the Orbifold Tarot and upcoming Arcanamx Tarot. With another video on basic cartomancy. We're going to look some more at each of the suits. I rambled on in the last video quite a bit about different associations with each suit, and we talked a little bit also about the very basic colors, red and black. Beyond the kind of associations with each suit that we talked about in the last video, I did want to mention a couple of useful correspondences with the suits in terms of seasons and timing. So one of the things that you'll find really anywhere on the internet, and probably in several books, one of the first things that talk about the magic of playing cards is there are a lot of interesting numerological aspects about playing cards that relate to the calendar year. So there's 52 cards in a deck if you exclude the jokers. There's 52 weeks in a year. There's 4 suits in a deck, which there's 4. Usually in the Western world, there's 4 seasons, although in the tropics, sometimes there's only 2 seasons or 3 seasons. But we count our calendar usually in 4 seasons. Each of those seasons has 13 weeks. There are 13 cards in each suit. And that adds up to 54. I mean, of course, if you divide 54 by 4, you're going to get 13. So the 13 isn't necessarily so magical there, although 13 is also seen as a magical number. And if you add 1 and 3, then you get 4 again, and it recurs. There's other like kind of internal numerological things. Another thing about 13 is that the median number, the halfway number, is 7, and 7 is also, I mean, I kind of think every number has its own magical attributes, and esoteric and special attributes, but 7 is often seen as a particularly magical or esoteric number. So that's kind of interesting too, that it's an odd number as the median number, and there's 7 days in a week. So the median number kind of also kind of intimates that we have 7 days in a week. So with that in mind, oh yeah, and the other thing that I didn't believe it at first. I had to like check it, so I added them all up. But if you add, so each suit has 13 cards. If you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, etc., up to 13, you get, I believe, 92. So that's the number of days in a season. And if you multiply that by 4, then you get 364. No, it should be 91. Yeah, it should be 91 actually. You multiply that by 4, you get 364, which is almost the same number of days in a year. And you add a joker for 1. And then some people say, oh, well, 1 joker is black and white, 1 joker is colored, depending on the deck, often red, but sometimes the joker has 4 colors, black, red, yellow, and blue in it, so 4 colors. And so that you can break that up into the quarter, because our year, our solar year, it takes not 365 days to go around the sun. It actually takes 365 and a quarter days to go all the way around the sun. Which we make up for in a leap year. So the second joker could be considered either the quarter of each year, or it could be the addition of all those quarters into the 1 day, the 1 extra day on a leap year, when we have 366 days in that year. So that can all be useful for timing purposes. We can relate you can relate the cards, the different suits, and each of the cards in a different way to the year as you see fit. But one of the more common systems, it seems, from what I've been seeing and working with and reading, is that diamonds are spring, hearts are summer, clubs are fall, and spades are winter. And so in terms of timing, and because each season has 13 weeks and each suit has 13 cards, you can use each card to represent a different week of each season. So Ace of Diamonds, for instance, would be the first week of spring. You know, the time from the spring equinox until a week later, 7 days later. The Four of Spades would be the fourth week of winter, around mid to late January, and so on. So that's one way to kind of get a sense of timing with playing cards. And there are many different applications, many different ways that you could use that. One of the ways that I find kind of interesting is in the case of using significators. So I kind of didn't want to get into this quite so soon, but I have to in order to explain the technique. So the court cards, all of the court cards would be significators. Generally, this is not going to be a surprise to many of you. Kings are going to be adult males, queens are going to be adult females, and jacks are going to be younger people, male or female. Now, that tradition comes from a more binary view of gender. And so when you're choosing significators for yourself or for your querents, you don't have to adhere to that. Jacks can be, since jacks traditionally are viewed as non-binary youths, they can also represent non-binary people of any age. So if you're reading for someone who identifies as non-binary, or if you're not sure of their gender, because you may not be sure of their gender, or they present one way, but then their manner, their for lack of a better word, energy is more of the opposite gender, then you could actually use a jack to represent them and represent that non-binary. Interesting about that is that jacks are actually 11, so there's 1 and 1. So there's still a binaryism there, but it's equal, 1 and 1. It's not balanced toward one side. So that's kind of cool if you want to adhere to that. But at any rate, and similarly, you could be reading for a mature male, an adult male, who has queen-like qualities. It maybe is a caregiver or plays some sort of role that might be traditionally viewed as a more motherly or female role. And that's nothing, and same with an adult female who's in what might traditionally be seen as a male role. You could use the queen for her, or you could use a king as a significator for her, not because of her gender, but because of the role that she takes. And similar for the adult male. So in our now more socially recognized non-binary world, which is great because we have so much more room for identity that doesn't just have to fit into such a narrow definition, the playing cards, the structure of playing cards still have that more traditional and more narrow representation, but there's flexibility there. There is fluidity, and so you can use gendered cards as different genders, and that's no problem. Anyway, so kings as adult males, queens as adult females, jacks as younger males or females, or adult non-binary people, or and other combinations thereof within those three rankings. You could also use aces as significators, which can also get around the binary issue. It's an option. Sometimes aces are low, right? When we're playing card games, sometimes aces are low, below deuces, and sometimes they're high, above kings. So there's room to use aces also as significators. You can really use any card as a significator, but the traditional methods usually use one of the court cards and sometimes the aces as significators. The aces of diamonds, or the diamonds, the suit of diamonds, the court cards of diamonds, tend to be fairer, representing fairer people. So that could be light skin, light hair, light eyes, light complexion, then hearts would be slightly darker complexion, and or tending toward, if we're talking white people, and again, we have to realize that these came out of Europe, so we have to take that context into consideration, and yet not follow it. We can apply the principles to a broader concept. So if we're talking white people, though, hearts are going to represent usually redheads. There's that fire aspect of water, whereas diamonds, because they're shiny, glimmery, are going to represent blonde or gray-haired people. Clubs are darker skin and or darker hair, or both. And then spades are going to be darker still. So, and again, we kind of have to get away from the idea of, it is unfortunate that the correspondence there is that spades are usually seen as negative, and then we're also ascribing those with the darkest people, and so that can be very racist. Let's just call a spade, that associating spades with dark people is racist. But we want to take it out of that context if we're going to read playing cards. You don't have to, but to move forward, that's the way. So we take the negative connotation of spades out. When it's a king of spades, it's not representing a vengeful person of authority. It could be in a reading, but if you're using it as a significator for a querent, you're not saying that person is necessarily a vengeful person in authority, and because they're a darker skinned person. That's not it. You're using it in a different context. In one context, it might mean a vengeful person of authority of any skin color. And in the significator context, it can be someone of any personality attributes, but the physical attributes are darker skin, darker hair, male person of authority for the king of spades. So it's a different it's a different context. With that said, of course, you can choose significators based on personality traits instead of physical traits, and depending on how well you know the client, or what how strong of a feeling you get from the client, the querent, you it may actually be more accurate. So if you're reading for someone who's very passionate, and it's very obvious they're really passionate about whatever they're feeling, or the people around them, or their caregivers, then you might choose a significator from the heart suit. If they're kind of very sparkly and luminous, and perhaps also very affluent, but not necessarily, but just very, very sparkly and very out there, and kind of exuberant, then you might choose a diamond, a court card from the diamond suit. If it seems like they're somebody who really belongs to a clique, or belongs to a club, a certain section of people, like they're really strongly kind of tribally identified, with a group of people, then you might choose a club suit significator. And if the person is a little bit standoffish, a little bit cold, a little bit cutting, decisive. So cutting isn't, again, not necessarily bad, but decisive, but also a little bit cold, hard to get to know, a little bit standoffish, prefers solitude, those kind of things, then you might choose a significator from the spade suit. So it doesn't have to be based on physical traits, but if you don't know the querent at all, if it's like a first time reading, then you can choose the significator based on physical traits. But again, physical trait, if you choose your significator based on physical traits, that doesn't necessarily represent what their personality traits are going to be like. So sometimes it does work out that way, and the physical traits relate to the personality traits of that particular card, but not always. And similarly, the personality traits don't always match the physical traits. So just be really clear with yourself when you're choosing your significator. Am I choosing the significator based on their physical traits? And then do that, but don't let that cloud your judgment or your image of what their personality traits might be like. If you're choosing the card based on their personality traits, don't let that cloud or influence your understanding of their physical traits. So it's really either or. And again, sometimes it's classic, like textbook. It'll be a redheaded woman who's a mother, who's a caregiver, who's, and it has all of those like Queen of Hearts kind of association. Like it just, you'd run down the list and they would all be classic Queen of Hearts traits, physical and personality wise. But usually don't rely on that, because it won't always be the case. And we as readers, I feel we really want to see people as they are, not as a set of correspondences or as a set of types. That's not, in my view, that's not the point of choosing a significator. The significator represents an aspect of them, and is just a stand-in. It's like a stunt double or a stand-in for them, and it doesn't necessarily encompass all of who they are, because no matter who's sitting in front of you, you are only seeing a part of them. No matter how deep you go into the reading, you may see a very deep part of them. You may see a part of them that nobody ever gets to see or gets to interact with. That's true. But you're still only seeing a part of them. And the more you typify the person based on the traits of a court card, let's say, the less you're going to be able to really see them. And I think that one of the reasons that people come to readers is not just to get answers to their questions, that's part of it, but also they want to be acknowledged, they want to be seen, they want to be heard. They may be, it doesn't even matter what occupation you have or what walk of life you come from. There are always people in our lives that don't see us. Like they see our skills, or they see our role in a family, or they see what they want to see, right? And we as readers don't want to perpetuate, I don't want to perpetuate that as a reader. I don't want to see what I want to see in that person. I want to see who they are, and even beyond who they present themselves to be. I want to see that. I want to acknowledge them. I don't want to acknowledge the role that I've assigned to them based on any kind of traits. And some querents may make that more difficult, because there's layers. All of us, we have layers, and very few people really show us who they are at all levels, because we're layered, and there's so much complexity in a human being. And so that's my warning about choosing significators. It's just choose a significator, but the significator is just a stand-in. Choose it based on personality, or choose it based on physical traits, or any other system that you like, but know that the significator is just a significator. It's just a stand-in for the person. It's not the person. It's not the whole person. And so don't let your choice of significator, don't use the significator as the filter through which you see that person. See that person, and then let the significator just represent what you understand of that person. But be open to, there's more to this person than a Queen of Hearts or a King of Spades or whatever it is. There's more to that person. And even if you don't say that, it will affect your readings. And this goes for tarot too, of course. It'll affect your readings. When you see a person and you're open enough to see them for who they are, not just how they represent themselves, not just who you want to see them as, not just who they want to be seen as, but you really kind of effort to clear that and let them be who they are, they will appreciate that. And your readings will in turn be more significant. At any rate, if whatever significator you've chosen for you or for your querent or for the person that the querent is asking about, if the significator does not show up in the reading, or if it does, you can, for timing purposes, you can look at what card is that court card, that significator, looking at. So in this case, aces won't work unless you look at the cards on either side, and that could give you a range of time, a time frame, but it won't necessarily, it would work a little bit differently. But if you're using the court card, which direction is that court card looking at, and which card is it looking at? So let's say it is the King of Spades, and it shows up in the reading, and the reading is, the question's something about, the reading doesn't even have to be about timing necessarily, but let's say it's like, let's pick a really mundane question, but common one and useful one. Will I get a job? So King of Spades is looking, let's say he's looking at the Four of Hearts, then that answer could be yes. since it's a red card. And it could be yes, it'll be a relatively stable job, blah, 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 whatever about the hearts and the 4 you want to say. But for timing-wise, that king looking at the 4 of hearts would mean, yes, you'll get a job, and it will be sometime between now and the 4th week of summer. Or it'll be around the 4th week of summer that will happen. If the significator does not show up in the reading, in the cards that you draw, you keep the cards in the pack in the order that they are in the pack. You look through them and find the significator, and if the significator is looking at and pay attention, what card is the significator looking at? Now, some court cards face this way, some court cards face that way, so it could be the card that's on top, or it could be the card that's underneath that court card, but it's which card is the court card looking at. And so again, if it's the King of Spades and he didn't show up in the reading on the table, and you look through and you find the King of Spades and it's looking at the 5 of clubs, let's say, then that means the answer to the question, within, all of the other stuff that may have come out in the reading and the cards that are on the table themselves, the timing of it is that the stuff will happen, the result will happen in the 5th week of autumn, if it's the 5 of clubs. So that would be kind of around, close to now, or a couple of weeks from now, around Halloween, I guess, or just around Halloween would be about the 5th week of autumn. So that's one of the ways to use playing cards and the suit correspondences with significators for timing. You could also not use a significator. You could just, if it's like a question of when will this happen, then you could just draw one card and use the same principles. And it could be, say it's the 3 of spades, then that could mean 3rd week of winter. Or if you want to if it's something that is kind of a finer range, like you're asking the question in the middle of summer, and the 3 of spades comes up, and you're like, well, it's either going to happen or not happen within the next month or 3 months, and it's a spade, but you're asking in the summer, then go with, it's going to happen in 3 weeks. It may be a no. The result of the question may be a no, but that answer will come in 3 weeks. Instead of, it's going to come in the 3rd week of winter. So there is again fluidity, and you need to experiment with it and figure out your own system. But those are some of the ways that you can use the suit correspondences and significators for timing.